Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Consumer and Social Intelligence Podcast. I'm Raj, founder and CEO of Omniosocial. And in this podcast, we'll talk with industry leaders in consumer insights and social intelligence and share ideas about how brands can understand people in this vast growing social and digital intelligence space. Today, I'm joined by Kathleen Fetters, Senior Strategist and Social Intelligence at Adobe, and we're very excited to have her in this show today. And this episode will be exploring about how AI and visual intelligence are shaping to understand the consumer and customer behavior. And looking forward to have a conversation with Kathleen. Kathleen, welcome.
Raj, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. I feel really honored to be a part of this conversation and being able to chat with you today about one of my favorite topics.
Fantastic, fantastic. Kathleen, it's an honor as well to have you. And I know you've been doing this in social intelligence and consumer intelligence for a long time. And I would like to get a bit of background from you, exactly how you got into social intelligence space and also what excites you in your day-to-day job, right? That would be fantastic for the audience.
Oh, yeah, it's been a few years, Raj, I will admit. So, before there was this thing that actually was called social media listening or social media intelligence, I was already dabbling in it a little bit, not necessarily with the intent for social media in itself. So, many years ago, I used to work at HP Enterprise, and I oversaw a few different teams. One was social media, and one I was editor in chief of one of the biggest newsletters that went across the world in 10 different countries every month. And what was interesting about that time and how those two things intersected was as I'm overseeing the social team and I'm also doing newsletters and email, which at the time people thought, oh, email, newsletters, it's going out. We had a lot of loss in subscribers. We weren't getting any clicks. And there was this thing, this data hub that I could get this information about what people were saying in social media. I was like, wow, that would be really interesting to understand what people were thinking, almost like, getting a firsthand like taste of what was on people's minds. So I started using that data to inform the newsletter. So it was what content we were going to include, the tone and style, and also even the amount of data, or actually the amount of content that we were including. So you wouldn't necessarily think that my social intelligence career started off in saving a newsletter, but that's actually what it did. And what I think is really interesting about that is my first foray into social media intelligence actually was this is data that can be used for so many things. It is not just for marketing. It is not just for social media. It's not just for any one thing. It can be applied to so many different things. So I really kind of like got thrown into the deep end of the pool right away with social intelligence before that's what it became, and really found the value straight away. Was able to not only stop the unsubscribes from the newsletter, but we started to get more visits, clicks, longer people like spending more time actually reading the content. And I wouldn't say save the newsletter, but kind of save the newsletter. And so that was like my first big exposure slash win using this kind of data that really kind of set the tone and foundation for my career over the last more years than I want to share, but I've been doing this for a long time at a variety of companies, from enterprise tech companies, regulated industries like banking and med tech, life sciences. So it's really applicable to just so many different things. And I think at the end of the day, that's why I'm so excited about it today as I was many years ago, because I just love seeing what we can do with this information and the evolution that I've been a process in, like experiencing from day one.
It's great, Kathleen. It's amazing. I think, I've actually spoken to so many people in this industry, like you also said, that's it's changing a lot, and it's not just for one segment. Example, it has so many use cases. Look at brand research, marketing, many different things. And again, with the exploding of visual data now, I think I'm trying to see an example. Obviously, you see also that there is a lot of visual content everywhere in TikTok, Instagram, even LinkedIn. Everyone is promoting videos a lot now. How do you see the visual intelligence is actually changing how the brands are really understanding the insights as well as cultural aspects of it and also consumers? Because text only it's very limited, right? You cannot express very well. And how do you see that visual insights matter a lot for the brands? And it will be great if you can share insights. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it has been a shift, right? Because for so many years, everything's been text-based, right? That's really the foundation for social intelligence, social media listening. And then with the emergence, like of video, it's not like it happened overnight. I mean, we've had video a long time, but I think what it is that the behavior of how people are using these different channels has changed, and we have now kind of like, oh, we've got to catch up and follow that as brands, as practitioners, and what have you. And it's really interesting because it used to be what people said. Now it is what people say. It's not like people are stopped writing words, but we also now have this plethora of video and imagery. And so there's more that what they're being said, more about not just what's being said, but also demonstrating those feelings, those products, those thoughts, those behaviors. I mean, really demonstrating it. And that is like a whole huge big window, right, of more information that brands can like jump on and hone. So this way they can develop the right marketing messages, but not just like in a way that we can engage or understand the audiences better, but also can we develop the products and services that we are seeing that our audiences really desire. They are showing us what they need and want. And so this is our opportunity to actually know even more in-depth information
Yeah.
about what they want so we can deliver that. So it's an opportunity, I think, for us. It's certainly something that we're playing a little bit of catch up to be honest with you, but I think we're almost there, and that's part of that kind of excitement and the evolution of what we do, is that it wasn't us that were changing things. It was we were observing the changes around us, and now we are honing in on that and being able to use it to really build out what is best ultimately for the consumer.
I mean, this is rightly said. I see that as well. What there's by far everyone has been using a text-based mentions. I think you rightly pointed an example how the visual intelligence is more important. And I still see that most brands are still looking at these text-based mentions, an example. Like, do you see any key kind of consumer insights they can able to gather from videos? An example, like, when you see in a video, you can see a lot of emotions, right? An example, people expressing, as well as, there's the sentiment of the tonality, and as well as things like, what's being described in the visual context, an example, rather than just a black and white text, right? Do you see any examples at all that, 'cause, I mean, obviously brands should look out for more like that kind of themes in the vision insights to add something?
Do because it's really interesting because what some you can only write so much, right? And this is not an a review, so to speak, of how people articulate in words across social, but there's a lot of things that people are demonstrating or showing in visual posts that they might not even be aware of. That's what I think is really interesting and kind of exciting, is that there are things that they may be saying like verbally, they're not written verbally, or actions that they're taking, but there's also these things that we think that we can control about what we're saying and doing, and we really can't. And now we have this opportunity again, like I just look at all these opportunities for businesses, is to identify that, because I can write, I love, this feature of this product. But if I'm actually watching somebody demonstrate how they're using it, not only can I see like, okay, well, they love it, but how are they using it?
Yeah.
Why are they using it? What's the context in which they're using that? That is a whole nother level of information and data points that we can pull together and aggregate with other data, of course, to really give a more holistic view of what people are saying, wanting, needing, etc. And then for us to be able to then show up and reciprocate that in that kind of same vein, right? So if this is how, it's like not like it's no longer just kind of like what they're saying, but it's also how they're saying it.
Yeah.
It's the big how. And I feel like that's kind of the thread across all of this, to be quite honest with you. So I think it is certainly a huge opportunity for us, but I think there are insights that we just even haven't tapped into that I just can't wait to grab and pull together. So I think there's the known, the obvious observations and behaviors, but I think it's those other things that are not intuitive that we didn't know that we're portraying, and picking up on those key clues, I think is as someone who loves mysteries, I think
Yeah.
it's natural for me to enjoy that and I want to solve that. But at the end of the day, again, it not just helps the business, but ultimately my goal is really to help the consumer, the customer, the audiences get what they need in a way, not just what they need, but in a way that they want to receive it.
Absolutely. And I think one thing came to my mind is really about when you look at video, right? As you say, a lot of people may not actually like visual mention example, right? People can able to usually visually mention a brand, or maybe perhaps they can talk. Hey, it could be Tesla, it could be, BMW or Nike, anything in there mentioned, right? Because it may not really flag up usually in the, posts or comments because you are losing a lot of those, visual mentions. I think that this is very important for brand to see, at least from my perspective when I see it, for them to understand those obviously the data points as well, to see why it's keep flagging on and what kind of context it is and what's the sentiment of the tonality and everything. So do you see the value of that as well, Kathleen? Could you add anything?
Yeah, I mean, you said it really well, but I mean, it is, there is this additional value. It is just, especially like too, as we're seeing it's not just the channels, the social platforms themselves that are making video and the creation of it more available, but it's also, if you think about the up and coming generations that are using social media in a different way, using it visually, that's that next generation audience, next generation customer. And so if this is, if this is how they are basically communicating, maybe to us, to their friends, to their own audiences, just even just putting it out in the ether, I think that those are, if we're not honing in and trying to figure out how to observe and use visual intelligence to see that, we're going to miss out not just on the moments and the opportunities for today, but I'm thinking like the long term, right? Like this is what's coming up, this is what's emerging from these next generations, and so we need to really make sure that we're capitalizing on that for the benefit of all, really, at the end of the day. So I think right now there's a lot of money being left on the table for businesses who haven't been able to spend more investment and time and being able to incorporate visual intelligence. Now, I also am aware that like not every tool, not every platform that we as social intelligence practitioners have access to can do all those things in the way that we might envision, but we're so close, right? We're so there. There are some out there, and there are some that are right on the cusp of that. I think it's really on us as practitioners to keep pushing on that and innovation. So this way we can collaboratively all together be able to move this practice really to the next level, but also be where the next generation is going.
Fantastic. Kathleen, that's brilliant, actually. I mean, it's just not just looking at right now, but actually looking at, where the audience are coming from for all these brands, an example, because all this kind of an example, people at like, teenagers to all the way like 20, their expression is video. And, they won't really are very accustomed to the text-based, like, commenting. Some of the older platforms, if you see, like, some people, at least I know when I speak to some teenagers, they don't use Facebook much. An example, everything is text-based. They just go use TikTok a lot, and also they just use Instagram Reels, all this kind of things happening so fast. And that's where they are, that's whole set of audience is so important for the brands for the future, as you rightly pointed out, right? We need to look out for all the signals, right? For sure. That's great. That's really great. So it's not just transcript we're talking about when you talk about vision intelligence. So it's really about the whole totality
Yeah.
of the images and the tonality and all the things we talked about, right? Is it right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know like in the past, visual intelligence has been picking up on the logo, right? That's kind of like that was like the next foray into being able to pick up those visual cues when something was not tagged, not written out explicitly about the brand. But now this is that going even past just I don't want to say just the logo, but past the logos and that and really the behavior and
Yes.
how things are being demonstrated and being used. And like I said, those kind of um, there's the intention of the person who's publishing whatever that they're sharing on TikTok or Instagram. But then there's also the unintentional, those uncontrollable natural human behaviors that are being shared out. And those are the things that I think are also like this kind of secondary level of important data that we should be paying attention to. It's like the obvious and then maybe the more subtle, because those more subtle items might be maybe more truthful, but also might be even that kind of like a signal within the signal,
Yeah.
right? So if we start to see that if people are demonstrating, let's say, how to use this particular feature, but the way in which they approach it, they don't say it, but you're watching them do it a certain way or express some kind of mannerism that goes along with however that product is being used, that in itself could be like, wait, I never thought that our product could be used in that physical manner. That's information, right, for us. So like that, just to me, it's like that subtlety.
Yeah.
And that's what we couldn't do with text-based listening before, right? It was just whatever they said, and you hoped that you understood the intent. Now we have this whole, like, not just second, but even third layer of information right at our fingertips, and it would be a shame not to use it.
That's brilliant. Actually, it's not just a logo detection. It's actually you need to look at the whole totality of it because that's where you'll be losing a lot of visual mentions and audio mentions, right? If you just look for the logo, because people won't put all the logos behind when you're talking, right?
Exactly. Or they might even be talking about a feature per se that maybe other products also have that feature, but that in itself is also, if that's like you're doing any kind of competitive analysis, well, I would love, it doesn't always have to be about the brand, but it could be a feature of a product that lots of other companies also have that same feature, or maybe you don't have it and they do, whatever. But those are the kinds of things that if you start to see like demonstrations of this particular feature and we're like, wow, these people, these creatives or whoever this is really demonstrating that. They
Mhm.
didn't say it. They're just showing it. And now we now know that this is a feature that we should emphasize or include or improve or whatever. And that I think is I'm so glad that we can start to do that now, because I think that we've really, I'm not saying that we misaligned with the audiences per se, but now it's just more refined.
Fantastic. This is really, really great. Fantastic. Cool. Another topic I wanted to really talk about is like, as you say, AI is evolving a lot and also it's coming into mainstream, obviously, in obviously everyone's lives. We use, many tools like ChatGPT, kind of a lot of other tools like automation tools as well. How do you see the AI, the way it's transforming, obviously, the whole social intelligence teams as well, how they work today? Do you see any kind of what is your kind of feedback or maybe inputs on that? How do we embrace or maybe have use it for our advantage in anything you
Yeah,
can?
no, that's a good question. And that's something that I thought about a lot, right? I mean, AI, it's funny because years ago, kind of going back to my time in tech, HP and Sun Microsystems, it was all about cloud computing, right? And oh no, like, whatever the new thing is, cloud computing is going to take over. We're going to, this is going to change things. It's going to make things harder, blah, blah, blah. There's all this fear and spin around it. And then as we started all using it, I mean, my mom might not have known she was using the cloud, but she was using the cloud 15 years ago. She just might not have known the name of it, right? So we're using these innovations, and it's not that I don't discredit that AI, like any other innovation, some roles will fall off as new roles are created. Just like the Industrial Revolution, right? It's very similar. Just it's a more modern version that we're experiencing right now. And then particularly for, our practice, social intelligence, having AI as another tool, another resource to be able to support the work that we're doing has actually been a benefit, right? So I don't necessarily see at this point AI as some kind of social intelligence practitioner replacer. What I see is my job has become far more strategic because, one, I cannot, and whoever could, I applaud you, read 10,000 or 10 million posts, especially when you're an enterprise business, a day, right? I cannot succinctly tell the business, this is what happened today, and what happened. You do the best that you could with the tools that you had, etc. But now with AI, I have either external AI, like you mentioned, ChatGPT and what have you, but I also have AI that's embedded in a lot of these social intelligence tools. So instead of having to do my best to manually review 10,000, 10 million posts in a day, I now have these AI summaries that really do a great job of pulling all that together. So what does that do for me and the business? Well, one, it saves me an enormous amount of time and I don't look as tired as I used to for reading all that stuff. But in addition to that, it's not just that it's saving me time, but it also means that I am getting that information and those insights to the business much faster. And maybe even with extra depth, because there is going to be a level of understanding that the AI summaries can provide, these summarizations that the AI tools can provide, that I could never be able to do on my own, or within a few hours versus several weeks,
Yeah.
possibly even several weeks. And instead of always being so kind of reactive and looking kind of backwards, it's also giving us this opportunity to go, if these are the themes that are starting to emerge, and I can see these within 5 minutes of loading my dashboard on whatever tool that I'm using, or dashboards, depending on what you're using, that means now I can dive even deeper because now that time has been opened up, right? Okay, I have now been given these breadcrumbs, so to speak, and now I'm following the path. And now there's those secondary, third level insights that now I can spend time looking at, because as the human, not the AI gave me the opportunity to have time as the human to then now drill a little deeper and provide that additional context, that other understanding of insights that AI can't do, because AI was not in the meeting. AI didn't sit down with, the social media team or the marketing team or whatever and have those meetings and those discussions. That is something that cannot at this point be replicated by any other digital asset. But what it can be is enhanced by those digital assets like AI, and giving me that time and looking. I guess like what I'm seeing too is, we kind of got caught in a trap, so to speak, of reporting on numbers and like, oh, the sentiment and the volume and all that. And that's all still important. I do not discount that. That is absolutely important. Benchmarking is one of my key things that I really like to focus on. However, I like to put an and next to that. And now we can have all these insights, deeper, more context, and faster than we were able to do. So I see social intelligence as a practice. It's always been kind of like on the side, like all the other social media publishing and engagement. Those they always get all the glory and the budget, and we're kind of always here on this side, but we're just as important as all that other stuff. And what I'm starting to see, because now we can do all these things that I just articulated,
Yeah.
senior executives are starting to take notice. Wait, I didn't know that we could do that. I didn't know that I could find this out in a few days versus a few weeks or months, or whatever the issue or the topic is. And so I mean, I'm excited to be in this position. I've been doing it for so long, but why I keep being in it is because there are these changes and these challenges, and I love being a part of that. What's next, Raj, right? Like the next generation. I want to be a part of what's next. And so I think that's where we're at with all of that. So I really, I know that AI can be polarizing, depending on your industry and what you're working on. But I do think that this has been a really good thing for our practice and the visibility that we can get within the organization, but also the value that we can now even not to showcase the value, but even expand on that value as contributors, the people using AI as a tool.
Definitely. I think that's a really, really fair point and example. I think the way I see it's like it's an enabler, right? An example. So the way you've been used to, I mean, everyone is used to the work right now, at least you can see right now, it's an enabling a lot of things faster. Like you said, about all the manual kind of analysis of reports or kind of mentions, everything, you can do that quicker. And again, if you use the right way of, the AI to your advantage, I think it will boost your productivity and also all the time what you get, right? To do much more productive work.
Yeah. I also think too, Raj, like I'm fortunate, and I think you are too, that because we've been kind of part of this whole practice from the beginning when it really first started, we've been in the trenches and we know how to write Boolean and all kind of the manual parts behind building out these queries and dashboards and being able to like pull all that together so we can get those, sentiment and volume and the insights. And so it's just to be able to get kind of past like having to do all that manually, we can appreciate like where we were to where we are
Yeah.
and really see like that powerful impact. So I do think that we are fortunate in that regard to be a part of this transitional period because we know what it was like before. Now we can see where we're going and also have an influence on that too, because we know what worked and didn't work in the old kind of way in which our styles or however our workflows were in our organizations. This to me is really like being able to have that in that's kind of insight in our own selves of our own capabilities and
Yeah.
being able to really get why this is a good thing for us.
Fantastic, fantastic. This is such a great thing as well. I think I'm sure everyone is embracing the way it is. That's great.
I hope so.
Definitely. So the next one I want to really talk about, obviously, there's a lot of culture happening. There's a lot of consumer behavior is happening on video, right? How do you see really these signals in visual data exploding, and obviously to further to add some of the things what you mentioned, any cultural shifts people can able to identify, or maybe the brand signals quickly when they can actually access the video insights than just focusing on the traditional like dashboards, reports, mention counts, and sentiment counts, because that only tells us part of the story, right? Do you see? Yeah. Uh,
Yeah, I agree with that. And I do think that just watching, even observing the adoption of how people are communicating visually. I mean, right? That's just it's just been a change, right? So we have seen it. Now it's a matter of like actually being able to access it with the tools that now have the innovation that allow us to be able to do it. So it's kind of coming to a head all at the same time, right? So this is this transition of how people are communicating because there are these other channels that have been available, just new innovations, etc. And then we're kind of we're meeting them, at the corner here and saying, okay, we see where you're at. And again, it's kind of like I don't want to keep harboring on this, but we are able to now see, literally see and observe, maybe not even just a big trend. Like before, it was like, oh, it's a volume spike. Look, that's it, right? But the volume spike can also come and go really fast. I'm looking at these observations that we're able to make off of the visual behavior as maybe it's not a spike, but maybe it's a slow moving emerging trend too. Like I think we make all these assumptions that a trend just happened overnight. It just
Right.
maybe we
Ah,
became aware of it
yeah.
overnight or at one time, but there are things that are happening over time, right? So that to me is like if we are seeing these behaviors or these demonstrations and we're seeing starting, we didn't see it before, and we're not saying we're seeing a lot of it, but we're seeing consistently growth of that is an indicator in itself. That to me is a reminder or a trigger. Hey, we should be now paying attention. Let's see if this is something that truly is an emerging trend or cultural shift and watch it. But now I have the opportunity to catch it really early before it either becomes something or it peters out. And now we're like, oh, it might have been something big. And then we wasted all this time, energy, and budget on something that no longer matters. So it's not just a matter of like before, it was about how fast can you turn around and jump in on something that's in that moment. Now it's more of something that's long tail. And because of that, being able to have these insights that we didn't have before, being able to like start to, I don't want to say benchmark, but start to like, I see this happen over the course of a few months and now it's a little more. So is it an overnighter? No, but it is an emerging trend or a cultural shift. Things don't happen overnight. Possibly. And now I know that this is where I need to spend some time to either jump on it as appropriate for the business, or maybe this isn't the right thing. This may not be in alignment with, even if culturally that may be where something's going, this may not be the right fit as in a cultural alignment for that business, let's protect the brand, let's protect our audiences by not jumping in something that doesn't make sense. So it's not just about what we do, but it's also what we choose thoughtfully not to do.
Yeah, that's rightly said. And the key takeaways here is about visual signals matter a lot, and actually paying attention to those nuances really help brands to identify those signals very quickly so that they can able to adapt and see the brand positioning quickly, right? That's great. So follow-up question was really about how do brands really see this in an example in the visual space, like you just pointed out an example. How does brands understand how their products are actually becoming visibly appearing in the a consumer space? An example, someone will be talking about visual mentions, maybe audio mentions about a product. Obviously, this is more happening in vision data, right? Than opposed to they won't really talk a lot about the post mentions or comments, right? So, do you see that actually plays a big role about how consumers are actually looking at the how the products are appearing in consumers, the way they're thinking, and actually they're actually using those products?
I think we're moving in that direction. I can't say that we're there. I think there are some brands, some industries, it's naturally more inclined. Like if I'm in banking, I may not, and having been in banking for a good portion of my career, that may not be the case, right? So really, I do think it depends on the industry and the audience for those brands that we're talking about. But I do think that there is certainly an awareness. I think people in our roles have brought that attention to some of the more senior executives that make those decisions, because the reality is that that is our job, right? That is our onus to like bring that to the attention of, you know, executives and the business in itself, so this way they can be aware and then make some decisions based on that. But if they're not aware, then they don't know. So I think part of that is the onus is on us, and then part of it is really understanding your industry, your audiences, and where that all fits. This is not a one size fits all. I think there's a place for everything and everybody, but what might be 90% for a creative type company might be more in the 10 to 20% for a financial services organization, right? But not saying that there's nothing. It's different, right? And so I think that's also really important and like I said, I've worked in various industries, company sizes, regulated, not regulated. So I've kind of been all around. And I really think that's an important piece, is just really knowing your business, knowing your audience, and then being able to kind of build out that, I don't want to call it that program, that governance, that how you're going to work all of that together, and also communicate up, right? Not just outwards, but upwards too, and make sure that, that's always been really kind of hard, I think, from a social intelligence perspective, because everybody's exposed to social media in some way, right? We're all exposed, whether we want to be or not, we're exposed to it. But social intelligence, the data side of all of this, that is not what everybody is exposed to. And so that's really like kind of always been on our shoulders, especially those of us that have been around for a while, is to keep, articulating that and exposing that and showing the opportunity, showing the value. So there's the work, and then there's the other work,
Yeah.
right? Is like really being a champion of these advancements, these innovations, and also just what's going on, because it's our responsibility really at the end of the day.
Fantastic, fantastic. I think the topic is very, very clear. I think so. If say an example, if I were to give this magic wand of, hey, this is amazing visual intelligence tool you have, I'm sure that makes obviously everyone's job much easier, right? How do
Right.
you see that? Okay, have any scenarios, not necessarily at your work? Hey, I'm just so much used to the text. I would really love to have this, vision insights. What do you think about that scenario? An example, obviously you have this magic wand, how it makes his job easier.
Oh, Rod, I've wanted that magic wand for my whole career, for everything.
Great.
There's always something. I think right now what is interesting to me is, and I've said this off and on throughout my time being a practitioner in this space, is it would be so great to to have a tool that really encompasses all things. And what I've found over the years is there hasn't been that holy grail one tool that kind of does it all. It ends up being a tool stack, which is fine, but these tool stacks don't always integrate seamlessly with one another. So if I had a magic wand, one, the first wish I would have is let's make one tool that kind of is a for social intelligence. It doesn't have to be publishing and engagement and all that other stuff, but just from a social intelligence, selfishly perspective. I'd love to be able to have the AI, the visual intelligence, the summarization, the ability also to, as someone who likes to pull the curtain back and see behind the scenes. I can still write my own Boolean if I want, but if I want AI to write it for me or edit my Boolean just to ramp it up a little bit, or maybe there was something that I missed, that is really, I would love that. But if that wish number one couldn't come true, then my second wish, my second wand wave would be then these tools to be more collaborative. And there's a lot of integrations that are available, which I think are great. But because everything is so different from tool to tool, it makes that a little difficult. So it would be great either to have that kind of super tool, and if not a super tool, a more collaborative experience with the tech stack. So this way that
Yeah.
each tool that is excellent at what they do, they can still be excellent at what they do and not become, a Swiss Army knife and just kind of try to be good at a lot of stuff and not really be good at anything. If that is where we're at, which is totally fine, then let's make it more seamless. What do we say when we talk about customers and banking? Frictionless,
Yeah.
right? And so right now there's a lot of friction because there's no tool that does it all by itself, but the integrations are also not as good or as plentiful as somebody like myself would like. So that would be my two wand waves for you,
Yeah,
Raj.
thank you, Catherine. This is so great. I think I really, really enjoyed the conversation. I think the key message here is that the visual intelligence is a way forward for the brands to understand. I wish I could talk to you a lot about this. I think this has been a great conversation, Kathleen. Thank you so much for a great, fantastic conversation today. I really, really loved it today. And again, the whole insights about visual intelligence, how they're transforming the brands, the way they understand consumers and culture and creativity. Thank you so much. I just wanted to have any key takeaway you have for people so that at least we can end up nicely.
Oh yeah, right. I think that the practice of social intelligence has always been a little bit of a mystery and maybe even daunting because it has been more kind of behind the scenes and everything else. And so, like for me, like speaking with you, having this conversation with you, being able to reach out and talk to other people within and even outside of our practice, that to me is the best way forward for
Yeah.
all of us. So I'm super excited about this next chapter and this practice. And I would encourage and hope that there is not just interest from businesses using this, but also more people really seeing this as another opportunity for their career and a way forward in a very digital, constantly innovating environment. And so that would be kind of maybe it's the third wave of the wand. I don't know, but
Thank you.
that's where I would leave it. I think that
Thank
this is certainly a growing field, not one that's shrinking as a result of
you.
AI. I think it's growing because of visual data and the importance of it. And I would really encourage others to look into it
Yeah.
as something that they
That's,
should have in their business. And if they're
that's
not in their business, in their career.
Thank you. Thank you, Catherine, again for the wonderful conversations today. I really, really enjoyed as well. Guys, for everyone watching, we'll share the podcast episode as well. I think thanks for listening. Thank you, Kathleen, very much for this today. Appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Raj. Enjoyed it.
Take care. See you
Bye
then.
bye.
Cheers. Bye.